The state of California is seeking an emergency restraining order against the Trump administration's deployment of Marines and National Guard to conduct law enforcement on the streets of LA.
If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last night we gave them a little additional help, you would have, Los Angeles would be burning right now. Last night they had total control. If we didn't have the military in there, the National Guard, and then we also sent in some Marines, we had some bad people. We have people, they look in your face and they spit right in your face. They're animals. And these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They're agitators.
Animals, troublemakers, insurrectionists. That's, of course, the president's words. The deployment of thousands of National Guardsmen and Marines to the streets of LA, just one way that President Trump is leveraging the United States military to project an image of strength.
Dragon 3 is All American 3. Acknowledge. Break.
This afternoon at the nation's largest military base, President Trump is kicking off a days-long celebration of the Army's 250th birthday. Today's display featuring flyovers, paratroopers, a simulated ground operation, all building, of course, to a military parade through the streets of Washington, set for Saturday. That day, Flag Day, also happens to be Donald Trump's 79th birthday. At any minute, the president will speak at Fort Bragg, and we'll bring you that live. And of course, we'll be listening for what he has to say, if anything, about the protests in Los Angeles, because that is where we start today with team coverage. We're going to have our panel weigh in just a few minutes, but we're going to get started with CNN's Kristen Holmes. She's at the White House, and Nick Watt, who is live on the streets of Los Angeles. And that's where we're going to start. Nick, I want to go first to you. What are we learning about this emergency order? And what are you seeing today as this drama continues to play out?
Well, listen, officials in this state, from the governor down to the mayor, do not want these troops here. I'm outside the federal detention facility right now. You can see some California National Guard members, some DHS officers, but most of the military personnel that have been deployed here to Los Angeles are being kept well out of public view. The governor said actually only about 315 of them actually have a mission, which he says speaks to the fact that they are not needed, that local law enforcement have this under control. Now, right now, there is a smallish protest outside here. It has been very peaceful, a couple of hundred people singing, music, talking, chanting. That has been it. There has, of course, been violence and vandalism in Los Angeles over the past few nights. But Mayor Bass of LA made it very clear, she said, for our national audience, you got to realize this is just a couple of blocks of downtown. This is not the whole city. She added, of course, violence and vandalism are unacceptable, and anybody involved in that will be arrested and prosecuted. She said that those people causing the trouble are not part of this immigration protest. They are agitators. So she calls the deployment of these troops a grand experiment. And she says that, listen, maybe what the administration is trying to do is put the fear into everybody that the federal government that has traditionally protected people could come in to any city or town and take it over. Cassie?
All right, Nick Watt for us. Nick, thank you. Kristen, we are expecting to hear from the president at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. What do we expect to hear from him, and what have we seen there throughout the course of the day?
Yeah, and Casey, look, as you said, this is really the start of this 250th birthday for the Army, so expect a lot of praise of the military. Donald Trump is likely to take credit for the growth of the military. He's been doing this since his first term, saying that recruitment is up. He always says that he saved the military, so expect a lot of that. Obviously, we also saw him looking at that big demonstration that you mentioned, but it is also likely that he's going to talk about what's going on in Los Angeles as well. He seems to not be able to stop talking about it. Just in an event right before he left for Fort Bragg, he took questions on the matter for at least 20 minutes, going into various aspects of what was going on. Now, one of the things was that he doubled down on the idea that he had brought in the National Guard and the Marines, essentially saying he had to because Los Angeles was under siege. He took on Governor Newsom, saying that he had just talked to him on the phone, that he called him and told him to get his act together. Now, the two of them have been going back and forth over that online, having their own personal back and forth, but he also left the door open to invoke the Insurrection Act. And that is one thing we've been talking a lot about. We know that there are factions of the administration who are looking at all the different ways to address the situation in Los Angeles that are short of or a little less aggressive than actually invoking the Insurrection Act. But Donald Trump himself left the door open and essentially said it would be up to him and what he viewed as an insurrection for him to actually invoke that act. So something that we're keeping a very close eye on there as well.
All right, Kristen Holmes, Nick Watt, thanks to both of you for that reporting. Really appreciate it. We're joined now to talk more about this from Capitol Hill. California Congressman Ted Lieu is with us. He, of course, serves as the vice chair of the Democratic caucus, and his district includes much of western L.A. County. Congressman, I'm very grateful to have you on the show today. Thank you very much for being here. One of your colleagues in the House, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke of New York, she said today that what we're seeing on the streets of Los Angeles, the sending in of the Marines, is impeachable, that the president could be impeached for that. I want to know if you agree with her.
It's certainly un-American, and as a veteran, it sickens me that the president wants to send Marines against Americans. And let me first say, peacefully protesting is an American right. Now, looting, burning cars, and destroying property are crimes, and people who do that will be prosecuted. People do have the right to peacefully protest, and state and local officials have said they have all the resources they need to handle the situation. There's no reason to send in the Marines who are trained to kill the enemy. What does the administration want them to do in Los Angeles? Shoot protesters? It is insane.
Congressman, Republicans are, of course, claiming that they are the party of law and order in all of this. And one Democrat, Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, had a warning, if you will, for those on your side of the aisle. I want to show you what he said, and then I'll ask you about it. Take a look.
We should have learned the lesson back in 2020. Absolutely, there was righteous outrage over what happened to George Floyd, but that never means that you can support or be quiet if there's this destruction or rioting and destroying and looting and those kinds of things.
So he used the phrase, "we should have learned the lesson." What do you say to Senator Fetterman?
I think Senator Fetterman may want to look at the statements that the Democratic elected officials in Southern California have been making. We have all been saying that the right to peacefully protest is protected by the Constitution, but no one has a right to destroy property, to commit violence. Those are crimes, and those people will be prosecuted. We've been very clear about that. Now, in terms of law and order, I just want to note the legal provision Donald Trump is relying on to deploy the National Guard under 10 U.S.C. Section 12406, he is violating the law, because that provision very clearly says that the governors of the states have to give the order, and Governor Newsom clearly didn't do that. And this is very important. I ask every National Guard member to read their orders, read the law, and then decide for themselves if they're following an unlawful order.
Congressman, do you think that Governor Newsom could have done a better job in preventing violence than he did?
No, because Governor Newsom has directed the CHP to go on scene, which they have. The LAPD is on scene. And by the way, I have this very important point I want to make. The National Guard's mission is to protect federal buildings and federal officials. So let's take the burning of cars. Even if the National Guard was all there, which they were not, there's nothing they could have done because that is not part of the mission. So of the 2,000 National Guard folks deployed, 1,700 are basically standing around doing nothing. And then to send additional Marines to do nothing is a waste of $134 million of taxpayer dollars. The president needs to rescind both of these orders.
Congressman, we, of course, have discussed, and President Trump has, and those around him have suggested various things about the use of the Insurrection Act. How should Democrats respond if President Trump does invoke the Insurrection Act?
If President Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, he's doing it unlawfully. If you look at what's happening, these are situations that local law enforcement and state law enforcement are trained and can handle. You don't want the president deploying federal troops all over the place simply because there might be some folks who are looting stores. That's something for local law enforcement to handle, and you don't want all 50 states subject to Marines showing up in their local jurisdictions. That's authoritarian, it's un-American, and it would be illegal.
So what should Democrats do about it?
We should do what we're doing right now, which is push back to sue. Governor Newsom has in fact filed a lawsuit saying that what Trump is doing is illegal. I agree with Governor Newsom. If you just read the law, The president is violating his authority, abusing his power, and the situation really calls for local law enforcement. This is a law enforcement issue. The United States Marines are not trained in law enforcement. That is not what they do. It's a total mismatch for the mission and a waste of taxpayer money.
All right, Congressman Ted Lieu, I'm very grateful for your time today, sir. Thanks very much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you.